Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, welcome to the second week's next lecture, that is lecture number 7, and here we will discuss about strategic planning and how it could be linked with performance. See, when we are talking about strategic planning, we need to discuss it in detail about what is strategic planning, how do we go about strategic planning, and the basic idea is that since we are going to link strategic planning with performance, we need to remember two things, that how do we go about analyzing the environment, setting vision, mission, goal, and then see that this alignment is at two different levels. One is that individual goals are aligned with group or department and then organizational goals, and the second kind of alignment that we have to see that whatever comes out as a vision or mission is percolated down to strategies, goals and objectives of the organization, leading to higher performance. So, keeping this in mind, we are going to discuss this next topic, that is strategic planning and performance, and the basic idea here is that how we can strategically plan to see that there is a consistency and alignment at different levels and how it is linked with performance. Now, when we are going to discuss about this, we need to remember certain things, that how do we proceed and what we need to do in order to look at this. So, the idea here is that when we are going to look at strategic planning, we need to discuss what is strategic planning. Okay. So, if you look at the definition of strategic planning, what does it involve? Okay. Basically, when we are going for strategic planning, the idea is to develop certain action plan, which will help the organization to realize its goals and objectives, right. So, if you look at the definition, it says that it involves identifying where the organization wants to go and how it is going to achieve what it wants to achieve. Okay. And then it also needs to see that it that how we can how we are going to identify the barriers in the process of achieving these goals and objectives. And for that, you know that we are going to analyze the environment and see that what needs to be done, right. So, once we are able to identify the goals and objectives where we want to reach, we also need to identify what are the barriers for this in order to reach those goals and objectives, and also see to it that what are the different kind of strategies that we can plan to reach to those goals and objectives. Now, let me give an example of strategy. Strategy basically relates to action plan. Firms or organizations make their strategies, okay, to compete in the market, to improve their performance, right. So, there could be different kind of strategies that could be built or developed by the organization, right. I am talking about the strategy here. So, for example, you want to differentiate your product from others. So, it is going to be a strategy based on differentiation. You want to compete based on low cost. So, that could be another strategy. Okay. So, if you are going to compete on the low cost, then you have to see that how you are going to create products and services which is going to be low cost compared to your competitors, so that you are able to achieve your goals and objectives, right. In the process, you also need to identify those barriers which is going to be there and which is going to hinder your goals and objectives. Like if you are going for low cost strategy, then you have to see that what are the things that you need to do as a part of your strategy, that is what we call action plan, okay, and how you are going to move forward to achieve this kind of objective using a low cost strategy, right. Similarly, in the process you also need to allocate resources, okay, that what kind of how we are going to use different kind of resources or input, right. So, you need to maximize the use of different kind of inputs, may be main material, okay, technology and other things, because you need to allocate these resources in such a way, so that you are able to achieve a good performance, and that would help you to achieve competitive advantage. So, when we are talking about strategy, is nothing else, but it is a kind of blueprint which defines how the organization will allocate its resources to achieve its goals, right. So, as a part of strategic planning, you have the idea here is that since we are going to link strategy with performance, so we have to see that how we are going to develop a strategy, so that we are able to improve our performance to achieve or realize the goals and objectives of the organization. Now, in this process we also need to see that why there is a need to go for strategic planning, right. Why companies develop strategies? Okay. The basic idea here is that if you have a strategy and an action plan, that would help you to achieve your goals and objectives. So, if you have a strategy or you have planned strategically, then it is going to help you to define certain things like what you are, what you want to achieve, what is the objective for which this organization exists, right. So, you can identify these identities with a good strategic plan, okay. And it also helps you to prepare for the future. For example, if you have a strategy of low cost differentiation. So, the idea here is that you are using these strategies to achieve certain goals and objectives, okay. And that would help organization to compete in the market, right. As a part of your strategic planning, what you do basically? You are going to analyze the environment, that we will discuss in detail later, okay. And then after the analysis of the environment, you see that what kind of changes are going to happen in the environment. And when it comes to analyzing the environment, basically you are going to see that what are the different factors which are operating in the environment, and then how many factors are operating, what is the level of these factors in terms of being simple or complex. If too many factors are operating, then it is going to be very, very complex. If only few factors are operating, then it is going to be simple. Similarly, if these factors are very dynamic environmental factors, then we can say that the environment is very, very dynamic in which you are operating. If these factors are not changing very frequently, okay, are not that dynamic or they are static in nature, then we can say that yes, these factors are not that dynamic, but more stable, and that is why you do not need to worry much about it. It means that based on this environment analysis that we will discuss later on also, you identify what kind of plan you need to go ahead with, because the environment decides what kind of a strategy you are going to plan for the future. Based on this environment analysis, you are going to identify the strategy which may be linked with the goals and objectives of the organization, right. So, once you have done this environment analysis, you know what is your strategy. The next task is that you are going to see what are your resources, what are your competence in terms of people, in terms of technology, in terms of processes, which help you to achieve these goals and objectives. Okay. So, the idea here is that make sure that you are focused and paying attention to your strategy, and similarly you are going to allocate resources in such a way, so that it helps you to realize the goal. Another issue that is very, very important is that you also need to create a culture. So, what kind of culture is important here? See, when you are going to talk about organizational culture, which basically represents what? The norms and values, right, of the organization. So, if you look at culture, it plays a very important role, because if you have a culture of trust and cooperation, that helps you to realize the goal, but if you have a culture of suspicion and mistrust, people do not like each other, they do not take risk, then what will happen? Probably you will not be able to realize your goal. So, while you are going to allocate resources to ensure that you are able to achieve goals and objectives, you also need to ensure that there is a culture of trust and cooperation, which is very, very important, because it could be helping you or facilitating you in achieving the goals and objectives of the organizations. Now, based on this environmental analysis, you also identify what kind of opportunities are available to you in the market. Okay. And similarly, it also talks about the threats, right. So, strategic planning for that matter is very, very important, and that is why a strategic plan helps employees to see that what are the activities that they need to take up at the operational level, okay, and what kind of behaviors or results are important for them. And based on this discussion, we move further to discuss some other issues related to strategic planning. Now, what we are going to do here, we are going to provide you an overview of strategic planning, what actually strategic planning is, and then later on we will try to link it with what you call performance. Now, as a part of strategic planning, we are going to conduct analysis, as I told you, related to the environment. We also need to identify the vision and mission of the organization. Then based on this, we set goals, and in order to achieve these goals, we are going to develop certain strategies which is going to help you to realize these goals and objectives. Okay. So, this is the process through which we proceed. So, in this part of the lecture, basically we are going to focus upon the environmental analysis. So, how do we go about analyzing the environment of the organization, so that we are able to identify the gap in the environment, which could help us to identify our strengths and weaknesses, okay, and then it will also help you to decide what kind of vision and mission you are going to have for the organization. Now, as a part of the environmental analysis, if we are taking up the first one, what we do, but before we take up, look at in detail what is the strategic planning process. Okay. As a part of strategic planning, you are going to collect information about the environment, about the stakeholders, about your competitors, right, about the performance. So, you are going to get all this data, and based on this analysis, you are going to do a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is basically which stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats as a part of the strategic planning process. And this SWOT analysis basically include identifying your opportunities and threats based on the external environment, and also identifying your weaknesses, right, based on your internal analysis, right. And then based on this analysis, you identify the gap which will help you to prepare for the kind of strategy that you want to achieve in the market. And then you can look at different kind of strategies and the options that is available to you, and then you proceed further. Let us take an example to explain what happens. Suppose you are going to operate in a market, okay, and then you are going to analyze your strategy. Say for example, look at the aviation market, okay, or look at the financial institutions, or you look at the telecom market, right. Now, if you look at these markets, most of these players are big players in this market, develop their strategy based on what? Based on the analysis of the environment, in what kind of environment they are operating, how this environment is going to affect them in terms of providing opportunities and threats, and they also try to identify doing some kind of internal analysis what are their strengths and weaknesses. So, in this part probably we are going to focus more on environmental analysis. In and subsequent lectures we also discuss that once you are able to do this SWOT analysis, based on that you identify what are the various strategies that you are going to have, okay, and then based on that you are going to develop your strategies, okay, and then you would do some kind of analysis depending upon the kind of opportunities, threats, strengths and weaknesses you have, and that is going to help you to develop your strategic plan in terms of objectives, okay, what are your main strategies, whether you are going for low cost, whether you are going for differentiation or any other kind of strategies, right. And then you also identify your goals in the short term and long term, okay, and then you also identify the kind of operations that you are going to carry out in order to achieve these goals and objectives. And based on this, then you look at your performance, review your performance and see whether these objectives have been achieved based on the kind of strategies that you have adopted or not, right. So, this is the entire strategic planning process which will be covered in the second week lecture. Now, we are going to proceed mostly with the first part, that is looking at the environmental analysis, which is to be focused in this particular case. Now, when we are going to do some kind of environmental analysis, basically the idea is to identify the kind of environment that you are operating in. Okay. So, the environment could be identified as external environment or it could be external, right. So, we need to analyze both the internal environment as well as external environment both. So, we have to understand the issues related to the industries and also see that what kind of decision can be made depending upon the kind of environment that you are operating in. See for example, when you are going to identify the environment for a telecom industry, right. Let us take an example to understand it. So, if you are going to take an example of a telecom industry, then you are going to do some kind of environmental analysis. Right, and this you are going to do for say telecom industry, right. Now, if you look at the telecom industry, and this environmental analysis is based on what we call external environment in which you are operating, and also internal environment in which you are operating. So, you are going to analyze external environment and internal environment. This is going to give you identify your opportunities and threats, and this is going to help you to identify your strengths and weaknesses. Right. So, opportunities and threats here is going to be identified and strength and weaknesses is to be identified. Now, when you are going for environmental analysis, you also identify two things: how much dynamism is there in the environment and how simple or complex the environment is. Right. If frequent changes are happening in the environment, it means that environment is more dynamic. So, it increases the level of uncertainty, right. If it is less frequent, then it is going to be less uncertain, right. Now, when I am talking about simple or complex, it means that how many factors are operating. If more factors are operating, then the environment is going to be very, very complex. If less number of factors are operating, then the environment is going to be simple. Okay. So, this analysis helps you to identify the uncertainty in the environment, right. So, once you are able to identify your uncertainty in the environment, okay, or the level of uncertainty that is there in the environment, then you can think about the kind of strategy that you want to achieve or want to have in order to realize your goal, right. So, it is something like this. So, the main thing that we are going to discuss here is that how this environmental analysis helps you to identify the goals and objectives of the organization. Now, discussing further, since we are going to talk about telecom industry, we have to see that what are the external factors, what are the internal factors, right. So, we need to identify those external and internal factors which help you to identify the gap, right, and this gap would suggest the kind of strategy that you are going to have, right. Look at the different players that we have, like Reliance Jio, Airtel, Vodafone and BSNL. These are the major players in the Indian market currently, right. Now, they are competing with each other in terms of products and services that they are offering to the customers. Now, what kind of strategies that they are having? Two kind of strategies which is being offered is in terms of cost leadership or offering a different kind of product or service differentiation. These are the two major strategies that is being adopted by them, and this kind of strategy which they are adopting is based on the external and environmental analysis. Say for example, if a company is going for cost leadership, say if Jio is going for cost leadership, then what happens? Others company also going for the same kind of strategies. But in order to go for this kind of strategy, you also need to look at your strengths and weaknesses, which is going to provide you a competitive advantage. So, now you have to see what is your opportunities in the market, what kind of threats are available to you, okay, and based on this external environmental and internal environmental factors, you are going to analyze the environment for the telecom industries and see how different players are behaving and what kind of strategies they are adopting in order to realize the goals and objectives of the organization. Okay. So, we are going to discuss the environment, and that is why I had given this example to explain you, right. So, moving further, what we need to do is that we have to see that what are the different kind of environmental factors which is going to play an important role, right. And under the external environment, basically the idea is to identify the opportunities and threats, okay, and opportunities help you to succeed in the market. Maybe you can tap new markets, or you are going to offer new products and services in the existing market or in a new market, or you are going to tap new labor pool, or you are going for a new technology, right. So, these kind of things are going to provide you some kind of opportunities in the market. Similarly, there could be threats from other competitors also, right. Not only that, but suppose others are offering more innovative products, say for example, if Jio is coming out with a new innovative product and services, then it is going to create a threat for other telecom operators. Similarly, say look at aviation industry, the same case is there. If you are going for a low cost airline and then you are successful, then other companies are also going to follow the suit. Similarly, you are going to ensure that the kind of conditions that you have, say the economic environment, if there is economic recession, then your strategy is going to be different. But if you are in a situation where there is economic boom, then the situation is going to be different and you are going to have a different kind of strategy. For example, if you have economic boom, you go for expansion and diversification. If there is economic recession, then you go for a lot of cost cutting exercises, restructuring, delayering, downsizing, right. That is a part of the external environment. Now, what are the various factors? So, economic factor is very important, like what kind of economic trend is there, economic growth is there, whether there is economic recession or not, right. Apart from economic factor, you also have political legal factors, how the political changes is going to affect our strategy, because when there is a new political party in the power, the equation changes not only in the international market, but also the domestic markets. Then social cultural factors are very important. What kind of culture and values people have, right? What kind of belief systems you have, what kind of workforce you have. So, all this is going to impact your strategy. Similarly, what kind of technology you are using, okay? Because technological changes are very fast in the industry. So, in many industries you will find that life cycle of product is very less. So, all this is going to affect the business. Similarly, if you look at competitors, you also need to see how your competitors are behaving, because your competitors are also going to affect your strategy in product, because if they are offering innovative product and if you are not able to offer the same type of innovative product, probably you are not going to be successful. So, you need to follow those strategies which is adopted by your competitors. Similarly, you also need to see what are their next strategic move, what kind of things they are going to offer or they are likely to offer. So, you need to anticipate and how you are going to see that you are also going to be on the same line. Then your customers, you also need to look at the requirement of the customers, what are their needs and expectations, how you are going to meet them today, also in the future, right. Then suppliers, you also need to see that what kind of relationship you want to develop, what kind of supply chain logistics you want to develop, okay, and whether you are going for automation or not, okay, and what kind of relationship you expect them to have with you in the future. So, all these are the external factors, because these factors are outside the boundary of the organization. So, when you are going for a external environmental analysis, you are going to look at these factors, right, and then you also look at the internal environment. And when we are talking about internal environment, basically you are going to look at your competence in terms of your strength and weaknesses. Okay. So, strength are your competence, okay, which help you to achieve goals and objectives. For example, it include your assets, okay, your capabilities, the knowledge and skill of the people, the kind of technology that you have. So, all this could be a part of the asset, right, and weaknesses include, I mean, the kind of structure that you have which is not facilitating effective performance, or if you have a weak culture, not a strong culture. So, that could be a weakness. Okay. People are not taking risks, people are not innovative. So, this could be considered as a weakness for the organization. So, the knowledge, skill and ability could be your that is called competence, could be a part of your strength. Okay. And if you have a weak culture, you have a outdated structure. So, it could be a part of what you call weaknesses. So, let us see what are the factors that is important. Structure, it is very important. Whether the current structure of the organization is facilitating good communication, because the idea of having a good structure is to see the kind of reporting relationship you have vertically and horizontally, and what kind of communication you expect both vertically and horizontally, right. So, you need better coordination, and for that you need a good structure. So, if the structure is outdated or obsolete, it is not going to help you to achieve whatever you want to have. So, you need to go for restructuring, otherwise it becomes a weaknesses. Similarly, the kind of culture that you have, what kind of norms and values are there, whether you take risk, whether you allow people to go for innovations, okay, and become entrepreneurs, right. So, if that is there, it means that you are thinking of going for a culture which is more of what you call entrepreneurial culture, okay, or whether you are having a bureaucratic culture which does not facilitate effective performance. Another issue in the organization is related to politics. What kind of politics are being played? Are people are conflicting, are having conflict for resources? Okay. Are they going for manipulations of the things? Okay. Are you collaborative and open or not? So, these kind of things basically are part of the politics, and then you have to see that this does not hinder your effective performance. Then the kind of processes you are having, any kind of processes related to marketing, HR, systems, finance. So, all these processes are going to see that if you have good processes and people are satisfied these processes, they are cost effective, okay, then it is good, otherwise not. Then size, whether it is too big or too small, okay. Are you growing or expanding or diversifying, okay. Whether you are going to manage your, you will be able to manage your growth or even downsize, suppose there is economic recession effectively or not. So, if you look at these factors, basically they are talking about what? Are they going to act as a strength or they are going to act as a weaknesses, right. So, when we are talking about internal environmental factors, this indicates about a strength and weaknesses, and external environmental factors, they talk about your opportunities and threats. Now, based on this analysis, gap analysis, we are going to identify what is going to happen, right. So, you collect data or information about the external and environmental factors. Based on that, you look at the level of uncertainty that you have, environmental uncertainty that we have already talked about, and this level of uncertainty depends upon how frequently these internal and external factors are changing and how many factors are operating, right. If more number of factors are operating and these factors are frequently changing, I mean the internal and external environmental factors, then what will happen? Then the level of uncertainty will go up, and then you have to see that what kind of a strategy you need in order to cope up with this kind of situation, right. So, based on this information, you are going to conduct a gap analysis, right, which analyzes the external environment in relation to the internal environment. It means that whether internally you have the strength to cope up with the challenges of the internal external environment or not. So, if you have strength and competence, your structure is good, culture is good, there is no politics, right, then probably, and people have the competence, probably would be able to deal better with the external environment, right. So, we need to pair both the external environment and external environment and see what happens. Okay. So, there are 4 options, the 4 pairs that has come out here. Now, you see that opportunities versus strength. Okay. It means that after the environmental analysis, you find that it is going to provide you a lot of opportunities in the new markets for new products and services, okay, based on what? Based on the competence. It means that you are competent enough to go for this kind of things. So, it is going to provide you some kind of competitive advantage. So, it is going to provide you leverage. So, this is the best combination. When we are talking about opportunities and strength, if both are available, then it is going to provide you some kind of competitive advantage. It means you can tap the market, you have the competence. So, people will be able to do it. So, and it is going to help you to improve your performance. Next, you have the opportunity, but you are weak. It means that once you go for internal environment analysis and you find that you do not have the competence to deal with the kind of things that is going to follow after the environmental analysis, especially the external environment, it means that you will not be able to realize or exploit the opportunities that is available in the market, and this is going to create a constraint, right. So, what you need to do? You need to see that how you are going to remove these weaknesses, so that you are able to leverage out, right. See, there are a lot of companies which know that there are opportunities in the market. Okay. Maybe in automobile sector, you look at steel industries or many other industries, but since they do not have internal strength or competence and they are weak on several accounts in terms of culture, structure and processes, they are not able to cash on the opportunities that is available to them, and then what happens? It creates a constraint and they will not be able to compete in the market. Third, threat versus strength. You have the competence, but you have big competitors in the market which are creating threats to you. You know, recently I gave example of low cost airlines or telecom operators who are going to offer services at reasonably good prices or competitive prices, right. So, this could be perceived as a threat for those telecom operators or those airlines which have been offering products and services not at a competitive rates. So, what will happen? It is going to open threats for them, but if they have the strength, probably they could cope, but it would increase their vulnerability or risk. So, if they are not going to utilize their strength in order to cope with the challenges of the external environment, then they become vulnerable and they will not be able to compete in the market. So, the question here is that how are you going to utilize your strength? You are having the strength, but probably you are not realizing that you are going to use this strength to overcome the threats. Okay. So, what companies are going to do is that they are going to look at our strength, structure, systems and processes, and they would need to bring about a change, so that the vulnerability goes down. So, the level of risk goes down and you are able to compete in the market. And finally, if you perceive the threat and you are internally weak, so this is the worst case scenario. It means there is a problem, because after the environmental analysis you find that a lot of competitors, but at the same time you are not in a position to compete, because inherently you do not have the strength, neither your structure, system and process facilitates this process. So, what will happen? You are not going to compete, and this suggests that you will be in a trouble, right. So, this would create problem for you, and so what you need to do in this case, you need to work out both. So, what kind of a strategy you are going to have? You need to adopt a different kind of strategy. Okay. Either you change your environment domain or you go for something else, so that you can compete, because in this environment in which you are operating, you are not going to be successful. Okay. So, if both are bad, it is always advisable to change your environmental domain where you can do something. Okay. So, the idea here is that how are going to use this strategic planning for the organization, and as a first step you are going to understand the environment and the gap, and that would help you to decide who they are and what they do, right. So, based on this environmental analysis, we move further to discuss about the mission of the organization. Okay. That is all. Thank you very much.